Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. Today I have got some awesome fall Instant Pot meal ideas for you today. I'm going to be making 3 main dishes in the Instant Pot along with a side dish and a dessert. You are not going to want to miss this, so let's get started. We are making this recipe out of the Instant Loss on a Budget cookbook, which I'll link down below. It is the best vegetable minestrone soup, which I thought was the perfect fall recipe for the Instant Pot. So let me share with you the ingredients. So first I've got some nutritional yeast. Baby spinach, we'll need about 4 cups of that, some onion, celery, mixed vegetables. I'm going to use some peas and some squash and some zucchini. I have 4 garlic cloves. In here I have a mixture of spices. I've got salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, dried parsley, dried basil, dried oregano, and I think that's it. I've got some sun-dried tomatoes that I'm going to chop and add in. You'll need some beans. I have dark red kidney beans and cannellini beans, about 4 cups of water, 1 cup of vegetable broth, and about 1 cup of fusilli pasta. You can use whatever type of pasta you like. If you're gluten-free, you can use that or just regular pasta. I also forgot to mention that you will need 1 can of diced tomatoes and some tomato paste. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start chopping up some of these veggies to get into the Instant Pot for this soup. So essentially I'm gonna start chopping the things that take the longest to cook, right? So onion and celery first. I'm using my favorite knife, my Minestrone knife, for today's video. I love this knife. They are sponsoring today's video, so thank you to them. You guys know I've been using this knife for a very long time. But let me tell you a little bit more about them and the discount that you can get with my code. So as you guys know, I've been working with Minestrone for a long time here on my channel, and I continue to work with them because I love sharing not only their awesome knives, but they also have a bunch of cookware and tools available on their site, and they are all fantastic. I use them in my own cooking practically every single day, but today we're going to be talking about their knife. It is fantastic. I actually have 3 of these chef's knives, and I'm going to be sharing how I use them in this video today. But the best thing about Minestrone knives is that you can get really good quality at a great price. They are made from premium materials like high-grade stainless steel, and so this helps keep them sharper longer, and they last a lifetime. Minestrone is 2 to 3 times less expensive than other premium knife brands. It's also great because upgrading to a better knife shouldn't be confusing. They have eliminated the marketing jargon and overwhelming choices to take the guesswork out of buying, and the Minestrone chef's knife is designed to replace an entire set of knives. It is universally loved. They have over 7,500 5-star reviews, both from chefs and home cooks, and I really think that if you guys are looking for a great chef's knife, you definitely want to try this out. It also makes a great gift since Christmas is coming up. So if you guys want to try out the Minestrone knife, you can get 20% off your first order. I'll have a link in the description box below. You can go to that link and use promo code JEN for 20% off your first order. Again, check out the link in my description box and use promo code JEN for 20% off your first order. I promise you will not regret it. I'm gonna chop about 2 stalks of celery. I have this celery already washed and kind of prepped in my fridge. And when I cut celery, I prefer to cut it into smaller dice, just because that's how I like it, but you can chop it however you like. Got 4 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to use my garlic press to give these a crush or a mince, whatever you want to call it. It's my favorite way to process garlic. And then I'll pop this into the Instant Pot along with the onions and the celery. Okay, so this recipe is really flexible in that you can use, pretty much any type of vegetables that you want. I have some zucchini and squash on hand, so I'm going to go ahead and chop those into like bite-sized pieces and use those, but you could also use frozen mixed vegetables. You could use potatoes, carrots, corn, whatever you have on hand. Okay, I've got some sun-dried tomatoes here. I'm just gonna go ahead and chop these up into small pieces. I need about 1/4 cup of these. Okay, so now at this point, my veggies are soft. I've got onion, celery, squash, garlic, and zucchini. I'm gonna add my 2 cans of beans, which I rinsed and drained. 1 can of diced tomatoes. Got some peas here. I'm gonna add my vegetable broth, pasta, sun-dried tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. I like to use this kind in a jar because it is very, very convenient to store in the refrigerator. I'm gonna go ahead and add all of my dried spices and 4 cups of water. Okay, so before I cook this, I just wanna make sure that everything is mixed up. Sorry, we've got some intense gaming going on here. I'm gonna cook this on high pressure for 6 minutes. Okay, so after the soup was done, I went ahead and released the pressure. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give this a stir. Everything looks cooked. And then I'm going to add in 4 cups of spinach. Obviously that doesn't need to cook because the soup is still very, very warm and it will just wilt down. And then at this point, I don't know, I'm gonna see, I may add some more broth just because right now it's a little more like a stew and I would like it to be a little bit more soupy. What better fall recipe than an Instant Pot applesauce? I've done this once before, but it's been a while. Super simple to make applesauce either in the slow cooker or the Instant Pot. I'll have the recipe linked down below. Basically, you'll need 8 apples. I have 2 like really large Granny Smith and then a couple smaller varieties. I only have 7 apples on hand, so we're gonna like improvise and use 1 pear as well, but this pear is like it's very hard, so it'll be fine. And then all you need is lemon juice, water, and some cinnamon. And then once the applesauce is done, we will taste it to see if it needs any sweetener. You can add either regular sugar or Splenda or stevia, whatever you want. But now I'm going to go ahead and give these apples and pear, 1 pear a peel. Okay, so I've got my apples peeled. I'm going to cut these up into uniform chunks. You just kind of want to make sure that they're all same size. This pear is not ripe at all. As you can see, my Misen knife makes quick work of it. So for the apples, I just basically cut them in half and then cut them in half again, and then you can use your knife to cut out the core just on an angle, and that, you know, part will have the seeds in it, and then you just kind of toss that out, and then I just cut each wedge in half so they're about, I don't know, approximately 1.5 inch chunks. All right, so in my Instant Pot, I'm gonna add 1 cup of water. I need 1 tablespoon of lemon juice, so that's probably gonna be about half a lemon, and then half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm just gonna kind of stir this together a little bit to mix it up. Okay, so then you can add your apples. If you have a bench scraper, that is a really handy tool for transferring items. I'll link a really inexpensive one down below. Before I turn on the Instant Pot, I'm just gonna toss this mixture a little bit just to make sure that all of the apples are as evenly coated as I can get them. So I'm gonna put this on high pressure for 8 minutes. This is actually an Elec Homes electric pressure cooker. There are many generic versions of Instant Pot electric pressure cookers. Some people ask me if they, you know, I think the Instant Pot brand is worth it. I would say, you know, the functionality is the same. They're both gonna do the same thing for you. I find the Instant Pot like buttons and interface to be more intuitive and I like it better, but this one works just as well. And sometimes it's nice to have 2, especially if you're cooking multiple things. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this cook on high pressure 8 minutes, and then we'll let it do a natural pressure release. Okay, so here's what the applesauce looks like when it's complete. Actually, it's pretty much already in applesauce form. All of the apples have disintegrated, but there's a few chunks. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use a potato masher to mash it. I did also taste this and I thought it was just a tiny bit sour, so I'm gonna add just about a teaspoon of this baking sugar alternative, maybe a tablespoon. It's in a large batch. I don't want it super sweet, I just don't want it to be sour. I'm gonna stir that in. All right, to store my applesauce, I'm going to put it into a mason jar. I have a funnel here and that is the best way to get it in there without making a mess. These are super inexpensive. You can get them either at the store or online. I'll link the one I have down below. So my whole batch probably isn't gonna fit in this one jar, but I'm gonna fill this up and then see how much I have left. And like I said, you can just add seasoning to your taste. Not necessarily seasoning, I guess, but sugar and cinnamon would be the key word there. And this works really great if you have apples to use up in your fruit bowl or your fridge, because even the apples that are bruised, they're fine. You just throw them in there. Okay, so here's the applesauce I ended up with. I would say I probably ended up with about 4 cups. So I'm gonna stick this in the fridge. It's really delicious. You can keep it in the fridge for about 7 to 10 days, and you can also freeze it. I would also recommend, if it's for your kids, you know, packing it into these individual containers, and then you can have it in their lunch or for breakfast or whatever. Okay, so for dinner tonight, I am gonna be making this recipe for pot roast in the Instant Pot. My sister said that she uses this recipe and it's really good. I've got some chuck roast here. I just kind of cut this into chunks so I could brown it better and fit it into the Instant Pot, but I've got mine here preheating with a little bit of olive oil in the bottom. And the first thing that I'm going to do is put my onion in there and brown that. And while that's browning, I'm gonna go and grab my carrots and give those a peel. So I've browned my onions. I'm gonna remove those. I went ahead and added my carrots in here, and I'm just gonna give those a little bit of color. Okay, and the next step is gonna be to brown my chuck roast. So I just have my olive oil in the bottom of there. I'm gonna brown these pieces and then I'll finish browning these two. Once it's all browned up, we will deglaze with some red wine. But here are the veggies I cooked up. We're not gonna add these until a little bit later, but you can see they have some really nice color on them. All right, so our beef is cooked. We're gonna deglaze with half a cup of red wine. And I'm gonna scrape all those brown bits up from the bottom of the pot. Okay, so I added some garlic. I'm gonna add about a cup of beef broth. And then the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of fish sauce and 1 tablespoon Worcestershire sauce. So that's what I have in here. I'm gonna stir this around, add the meat back in, and I think the onions. Okay, so no onions back in yet. The onions go in later. So put my meat back in here. I've got my broth in the bottom with the wine. I put in some fresh rosemary and some fresh thyme. So we're gonna put the lid on this. And then this is gonna cook on high pressure for 50 minutes. All right, so the 50 minutes are up, and I also let it do a 10-minute natural pressure release. And oh my god, this is falling apart. It looks delicious. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the beef to a pan. I'm gonna cover it and let it rest, and then I'm gonna put the veggies back in. All right, so potatoes are in. We're gonna add the carrots and the onions, and I'm gonna cook this on high pressure for, I think, 6 minutes. Okay, so just finished with the potatoes and the carrots. The potatoes turned out really tender, as you can see, as did the carrots. So I'm gonna fix up a plate and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's what my plate looks like. You can make a gravy out of the like au jus, but we don't, or I typically don't. I normally just like spoon the broth over the food. So I've got potatoes, kind of mash them a little bit, put some butter, salt, pepper, broth, carrots, and the pot roast. This turned out really good. I would highly recommend this recipe. I will link it down below. Okay, so I thought it would be fun to include a dessert recipe in this video. So we are gonna make pumpkin cheesecake in the Instant Pot. I've been cooking with an Instant Pot for a very long time, but I have never made cheesecake in it. So this is gonna be an adventure. So I have my 8-quart Instant Pot here. I have a trivet in the bottom. We're actually gonna use a 7-inch springform pan. I believe I picked this up at Aldi, but it was a seasonal item, so I can link a similar one down below. But essentially we're gonna be putting water in the bottom of the Instant Pot, and then the cheesecake will sit up here and it will bake like that. I will link the original recipe that I'm using down below, but I'm gonna modify a few things just to make it have a little less sugar. So for the crust, Next, I am going to be using some pecans, some walnuts that I have here, and some of these grain-free cookies. This is the peanut butter flavor, but honestly, I'm just gonna use a little bit of it for like the crunch factor. The original recipe, I believe, calls for ginger snap cookies. I also have some melted butter. Instead of sugar, I'm gonna be using this baking sugar alternative from King Arthur Baking Company. So it's sugar-free. I've got pumpkin pie spice, cinnamon, some vanilla, half a cup of heavy cream, pinch of salt. I'm gonna need 12 ounces of cream cheese, which I have softened, some cornstarch, eggs, and 1 cup of pumpkin puree. All right, so I've got my food processor here. I'm gonna use this to make the crust. So in this measuring cup, I've just got some of those paleo cookies, I guess, and some nuts. Stick those into the food processor, and we're just gonna process these into fine crumbs. You could also, like the recipe says, use ginger snap cookies or even graham crackers. Okay, so that is into fine crumbs. I've got half a stick of butter here that I melted. And then the recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'm just gonna use about half a tablespoon just because those cookies that I used are partially, sweetened anyway. And then I'll blend this up. Okay, so see how it kind of all comes together like that? I'm gonna pat this out into the bottom of the pan. So here's my completed crust. I just sprayed this pan with cooking spray and just kind of pressed the crust mixture into the bottom of the pan. So this is gonna go in the freezer while we make the filling. I have my stand mixer here, and in the bowl I've got 12 ounces of cream cheese. I'm gonna use the whisk attachment because I think sometimes I feel like that gives the cheesecake a creamier texture. Definitely, you're not probably gonna be able to do this by hand, so don't worry. If you don't have a stand mixer, just use a hand mixer. It'll work just fine. So I'm gonna whip this up until it is softened. I'm gonna add a little less than half of a cup of that sugar substitute. Sometimes I find when I'm using sugar substitute that I like to use a little bit less because it can be strong. And then in this bowl here, I've got my cornstarch, pumpkin pie spice, and a pinch of salt. I'm gonna turn this on, and then I will add the eggs one at a time. So I just realized the one thing I didn't do was I didn't add any cinnamon to the crust mixture, which I was supposed to, but that's fine. It'll all work out. So I'm gonna scrape down the sides. Make sure that you're always, doing that when you have a stand mixer, especially and you're making some type of batter, because otherwise everything won't get mixed properly. I did just go ahead and add a few extra shakes of cinnamon in here so that can compensate for the lack of cinnamon in my crust. So the last step is to add my pumpkin puree. I have a cup of that. I had a little bit left in the can since the can of pumpkin is more than a cup, but I'll figure out something else to do with that. You can also freeze pumpkin puree if you need to. I'm gonna add some vanilla. And then while that's beating, I'm gonna stream in the heavy cream, just half a cup. So filling is done. I'm gonna go ahead and pour that into my crust. It smells really good. I love me a good pumpkin cheesecake. I'm gonna pour 1.5 cups of water into the bottom of the Instant Pot. That is actually what's going to steam the cheesecake. And then I'm gonna carefully put this into, whoops, I said carefully. I'm gonna stick that in there. Hope that's level. I'm going to put the lid on this and cook this on high pressure for 28 minutes. So here's what our cheesecake looks like. I let it do a natural pressure release for about 30 minutes, which basically just means letting it sit without releasing the pressure valve. So I'm gonna carefully remove this and put it on a wire rack, and we're just gonna let it cool at room temperature for about an hour. So for this fall Instant Pot recipe, we're going to make a 1-pot pork tenderloin and mashed potatoes. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. So I've got my Instant Pot here. I've got about a 1.5 pound pork tenderloin that I got from the store. I just rinsed it and dried it. I'm going to rub this with some spices. So in here I've got salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and Italian seasoning. I'm gonna use this garlic infused olive oil to saute the pork. I also need 3 cups of chicken broth, broth, I'm using the Knorr chicken bouillon just because it's super convenient to mix that up. I've got some potatoes here. Those are actually going to cook with the pork. I'm going to end up peeling and slicing those. And then for the mashed potatoes, I've got some butter, cream cheese, milk, salt, and pepper. I will link this original recipe down below. I've got my Instant Pot heating to saute, and I'm going to put a couple tablespoons of the garlic infused olive oil in there. So for the pork, I'm just going to go ahead and mix these spices up and sprinkle those on there, and then just rub the spices in. All right, so my Instant Pot is heated up. I'm gonna go ahead and put my tenderloin in there. I'm gonna put it fat side down first. And if your Instant Pot is too small to hold your pork loin, just cut it in half. As this sautés, I'm just gonna turn it over and try to get it browned on all sides before I remove it from the pot. All right, so this pork is done browning on all sides. It looks great. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit of chicken broth to the bottom to deglaze. And you just wanna take a spoon, and while that boils off, just scrape the brown bits off the bottom of the pot. Smells really good. All right, so while my Instant Pot is deglazing, I've got my potatoes here. I already peeled them, and I'm just gonna go ahead and slice these into maybe about 1/2-inch pieces. You don't want them super small because we are gonna end up cooking these in the Instant Pot, and we want them to get tender but not necessarily fall apart. If you guys have not tried these Misen chef's knives, I highly recommend them. I have been using them for, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look, but it's probably been over a year now. Just in regular everyday life and on my channel, I honestly probably use these every single day because I cook a lot, and I highly recommend them. They are fantastic quality and they hold up really well. Make sure that you don't put them in the dishwasher, don't soak them in water, take really good care of them, and they'll last forever. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that all the brown bits are scraped off the bottom of the pot, and they are in with the broth, which is what you want. That's all the flavor from searing the meat. We're gonna make a gravy after this is all said and done. All right, I've got my sliced potatoes here, so I'm just gonna put those in the Instant Pot. I'm gonna make sure those are in an even layer, and then I'm gonna add my pork loin that's been seared over the top of those. Add the remainder of my chicken broth. All right, so this definitely doesn't take long at all. It just takes a 5-minute cook time on high pressure. So we're gonna do manual and then turn it down to 5. And then after it's done cooking, we'll do a natural pressure release. So after the pork and the potatoes are done cooking, you wanna do a natural pressure release, which I just took the lid off. That took about 24 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove the pork to a plate and cover that with foil, and then we'll mash the potatoes and make the gravy. All right, so here's what we're gonna do to finish this meal. So I've got a bowl here. I'm gonna go ahead and put my mashed potato ingredients in there. So again, I've got cream cheese, butter, and some milk, or half and half, whatever you want to use. I'm gonna use a slotted spoon to take the potatoes out and put them on top of the dairy mixture. That way it will help it start melting. And then we'll go ahead and mash that and season it to taste. Obviously it might need salt and pepper. Okay, so with the juice or the broth or whatever you want to call it that is left in the bottom of the pan, I'm gonna go ahead and turn the Instant Pot on saute, and then I'm going to stir in a mixture of just cold water and cornstarch. This is gonna help thicken it, into a gravy, and we'll whisk that as it thickens up. For the mashed potatoes, I've got a potato masher here, and I'm just gonna mash these, make sure everything is seasoned properly, and when everything is done, I will show you how our plate looks. All right, so here's what this dish looks like plated up. I'm not kidding. This may be the most delicious thing I've ever cooked in the Instant Pot. I highly recommend you give it a try. The pork is super, super tender and easy to cut. The mashed potatoes are really delicious because, again, they were cooked and seasoned with the pork broth. The gravy turned out good. I just sprinkled it with some parsley. We are gonna have this with a side salad, but again, highly recommend this recipe. It turned out so good. All right, that is gonna wrap it up for today's fall Instant Pot video. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching these recipes. I'll have them all linked in the description box below. My favorite probably was the pork roast and mashed potatoes, although they were all delicious. That is definitely the one I will be making again and again. Thanks so much again to Misen for sponsoring. Don't forget to check out the link below and use my promo code to get 20% off your first order. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.